As some of you know, adapting video games into films is incredibly challenging. A great adaptation must be both engaging to the casual viewer and faithful to the source material in order to make it right for the fans. Over the decades, video games have evolved by acquiring complex plots, expansive worlds, and stunning visuals, which is why this industry has drawn in massive audiences. With such growth, it was only a matter of time before movie-making studios joined the party, aiming to capitalize on the success of popular gaming franchises out there. Unfortunately, most of these adaptations have failed across the board. They weren't engaging enough to attract regular viewers and failed to properly connect with the source material, leaving fans of the games disappointed. Recently though, things have started to change and game adaptation projects have achieved notable success. Shows like Fallout, The Last of Us, and Arcane, being the latest example, have struck a balance between accurately representing the games they're based on and being captivating enough for viewers that are completely unfamiliar with them. And this brings us to one of the most anticipated adaptations of the 2010s, Assassin's Creed. Released in 2016, the film was met with widespread criticism from gamers and bombed at the box office. But is it really as bad as everyone suggests? I think not, and let me explain this. Why did I come up with this idea now, you might ask? You see, Ubisoft, the powerhouse studio behind the Assassin's Creed franchise, is on the edge of collapse. The studio's recent projects have been downright awful, and this led me to revisit their older titles and reflect on Ubisoft's glory days. While replaying Assassin's Creed Unity and Syndicate, games that I find totally stunning in their authenticity and period detail, the live-action film adaptation came to mind. I first watched the movie in theaters when I was probably 15. At the time, I loved it. I remember being so engaged by the film that afterward I rushed to a game store, begged my mom to transfer me some money in order to buy an Assassin's Creed title to play. That's how much it hooked me. As time passed, I started wondering about a sequel. That's when I learned the film had bombed spectacularly and any plans for sequels were shelved. And now, years later, while playing the games, I was inspired to rewatch the movie. And here's my unpopular opinion. It's not that awful, it doesn't deserve its enormous amount of hate, and this video is my reflection on what could have been done differently to turn this movie into a good adaptation and a strong foundation for future Assassin's Creed films and shows.
I understand it's your birthday. Yeah. The party's just getting started.
Making an Assassin's Creed movie by adapting the story of one of the franchise's most beloved entries probably seemed like a great idea during pre-production. Think about it. You'd start with an established protagonist who is familiar to fans and recreate a proven and captivating story for the big screen. Sounds easy enough. However, this approach has its risks. For instance, portraying an established character leaves no room for error. Any missteps in characterization would provoke fan outrage. Additionally, reworking a game's narrative into a film format imposes limitations. You can't stray too far from the original plot. And finally, let's not forget that Ubisoft had much bigger plans. They didn't want to make just one movie by replicating one of their most successful games. They wanted to expand the universe, so the film introduced a brand new protagonist, tasked with two key objectives. First one is accessibility. The story needed to introduce new viewers to the world of Assassin's Creed through the protagonist's perspective. Second one is, of course, franchise potential. A unique story could serve as the foundation for sequels, prequels, spin-offs, and more, which allows to earn enormous amounts of money. And Ubisoft really needed that for their own production company called Ubisoft Motion Pictures, which they have just launched at the time. So taking everything into account, it is extremely sad to realize that these guys had all the potential to create a killer blockbuster franchise. They had a line of extremely successful games with a unique setting, a big and loyal fan base, and the plot of the games itself allowed to leap between historical periods, which gives the opportunity to create more stories about that. All they had to do was execute the first movie properly. That's it. But, as it turned out, they failed. So where did it all go wrong and how could it have been done better? Instead of being a compelling adaptation for fans and newcomers alike, the Assassin's Creed movie became an overly serious, shallow narrative that failed to engage anyone. The story's tone was overly grim and intense for a PG-13 film based on a video game. While I personally didn't mind it at the time, it is obvious that such a dark atmosphere was the wrong choice for a film aimed at younger audiences, and there were two directions they could have taken for much better results. The first approach is about keeping the dark tone and creating the story that is more complex. Plus, they could have made the movie specifically for an R rating. This would allow for more graphic, game-like depictions of assassinations and violence. And the movie could stand alone as a complete narrative, free of some obvious signs that there will be a sequel. If the movie is a financial success, you would definitely find ways how to drive the story forward. But I still tend to think that while this approach might have earned critical and fan respect, it would likely have struggled financially due to the R rating and an extremely complex plot that would be fully understandable only to people that have played the games. So the second approach is way better for what they were aiming for. Lighten the tone big time, keep the movie PG-13 and create a simple yet engaging story with key elements of Assassin's Creed lore, which are iconic features from the games like breathtaking parkour, stealthy assassinations, detailed historical settings. And don't forget to bring at least one well-known protagonist from the games, and this will do wonders for you, because the fans would be extremely delighted to see it on the big screen. I truly believe that including these specific elements would have definitely broadened the movie's appeal and set it up for a successful franchise, with multiple movies and shows going into pre-production after the success of the first project. But what we got in the result was a bizarre combination of only some of the elements that I mentioned. The movie barely has any assassinations, mediocre parkour and fight scenes, the story is overly serious and shallow, the characters are underdeveloped as hell, and the visuals are not breathtaking, they're uninspiring at best. Speaking of which, Ubisoft, I got a question. You are known for creating extremely stunning and breathtaking visuals in your games, and here in the movie, you gave us some slums in Spain and mostly deserts. I know there was one scene in the city of Granada, but doesn't compare to the gorgeous cities from the games. Not even close. So, thinking about the movie's creative execution, with all the great stuff they were given from the very beginning, there's only one phrase that comes to my mind, and the phrase is wasted potential. Because the potential was freaking wasted from beginning to the very end, and this movie could have been so much more. Alright, it's time to wrap this up. The Assassin's Creed movie isn't irredeemably bad. On the contrary, it has some high-quality elements like pretty decent cinematography and a totally incredible soundtrack. The movie even set a world record for the highest freefall performed by a stuntman in 35 years. All of this can be compared to a really beautiful building, an architectural marvel. However, every building needs a solid foundation, and here the foundation, meaning the plot, the characters, the overall quality of the film, is not solid whatsoever. We cannot properly dive into the story because despite having interesting concepts, it isn't engaging enough. We cannot connect with these characters because their actions and motivations aren't understandable, plus they totally lack depth. One word that describes everything about this film is underdevelopment. Such a great background with the games, A-list actors who probably tried their best with the given material, and many other great tools wasted. In the result, the movie is extremely mediocre and it is one of the worst attempts at creating a big blockbuster franchise. That's for sure. Well done, Ubisoft. Thank you very much for watching. Seriously, thank you to everyone who decided to click on the video about a movie that no one knows and cares about. I really appreciate this. And if you watched Assassin's Creed movie, then definitely let me know what you think in the comments down below and stay tuned for the next video. Peace.